So I want you to believe that when he died on the cross, he took the punishment.
Well, how do you know if you have?
How do I know it?
How do you know if you have surrendered to the resurrected Christ?
I think that they are the fruits of the Spirit. That there are these things, and this is what the book, The God of Intimacy and Action, is all about. Showing how that kind of personal experience and how the various prayer forms of Lectio Divina that we were talking about and centering prayer and all that, how this surrendering to Christ, this is the evidence. When you are surrendered to Christ, you have this insatiable desire to do two things: to win people to the Lord. You are driven to tell other people about Christ.
Yeah, why wouldn't you be?
You become like the man on the Titanic, and as the ship's going down, going around trying to tell people, there's a lifeboat over here, there's a lifeboat over here. You have no choice. You feel yourself compelled to do it. There is an
But for me, it's more like there's a party going on.
Yeah.
You know what? It's not like it used to be like the lifeboat thing when I saw the flames of hell licking at everyone's rear end and thinking if I don't win them, their blood will be on my hands. Now it's no longer that. It's more like y'all are missing out on a great party. Yeah. There's a party going on and you're invited, and it's more like instead of, if I don't tell, I got to go out and knock on doors. If I don't tell them, their blood's going to be on my hands. It's more like, y'all, I have found something here that you're going to love.
I think
Isn't it more like that?
Yeah, I don't think you get that originally. I think we all start at a very primitive level. Let me tell you a story. The last guy to be hung in England.
Oh, I love this story.
Was Charlie Peace.
Yeah.
And the Anglican Church has a ceremony for everything, even for hanging people. So Charlie Peace, the last man to be hung in England, is on his way to the gallows. The priest is behind him reading the liturgy. And in the liturgy, there's something that goes like this: to die without Christ is to experience all the fears and anxieties of facing death. This guy's going to go. Without the deliverance that death itself can bring. Charlie Peace spun around, grabbed the priest, and shook him, and he said, "Do you believe that? Do you believe that?" The priest said, "Well, yeah, I suppose I do." He said, "Well, I don't. But if I did, mister, I would go from one end of this kingdom to the other. If I had to, I would crawl on my hands and knees over broken glass to spread the word." People, when we were talking earlier about hell, I wonder how much people really believe in hell. I mean, could you sleep at night? How do you sleep at night knowing that your neighbor, that your relative, that your friend doesn't know Christ and might be dead and going there? How do you just shrug that off and walk away from it all? If you really believe in hell, doesn't it create a dis-ease? You're uneasy with the whole reality that there are people out there that are lost?
I think I don't know how I do it, because I do it.
Yeah.
How do you do it?
I don't live with anxieties about these things.
I think when my focus moved from hell to Jesus, it changed everything.
Well, let me put it this way.
Because I thought, gosh, y'all got to get to know him. Instead of, I'm afraid you're going to burn forever. It's more like, if you only knew how lovely he is.
Okay. Let me go through stages in my life.
All right.
Stage number one. I remember being in church one day, and the pastor talking about hell and the punishment that I would have to endure if I didn't surrender my life to Christ. And it scared me. And he said, "You can escape from this if you accept Jesus. Would you come down the aisle?"
It was a fire escape.
I went down the aisle. And I went down the aisle because I was concerned about me and what would happen to me. Once I got introduced to Jesus, I began to love him for his own sake and say, man, I didn't know it could be this wonderful, that it could be this, as you said, this party.
Yeah.
I didn't know that. When I went down the aisle, I didn't know what I was getting into. All I thought I was doing was getting out of hell.
Yeah.
But once having met Jesus, it was different than
Hell
anything.
becomes irrelevant.
It really does. But only after I came down the aisle because I was afraid of hell. But once I came down the aisle, I found out how Jesus was wonderful and I came down the aisle because I loved me. I didn't want anything to happen to me. I was concerned about me.
Right.
The total focus was me. Once I met him, I didn't love him because I loved me. I loved him for his own sake because he was so wonderful.
Mm-hmm.
And then the next stage was this. The more I fell in love with him, the more I fell in love with all the people that he loves. And that's what made me committed.
And that's everybody.
Yeah, to feeding the hungry, clothing the naked. That's what made me anxious to share the gospel story with those who were lost. The more I loved him, the more I loved the people that he loved. Do you see? And then one day I woke up to the realization, if I'm going to love everybody that God loves, I got to love me.
Yeah.
I got to love me. But it was a different kind of
That's
love.
different, isn't it?
Yeah, it's one thing to love God in an egoistic sense. It's another thing to love God because you know he loves you.
Loving yourself.
Because God loves you.
And agreeing with the potter.
Yeah.
You know, I've had to agree with the potter that the pot was worth it.
Good stuff.
You know?
Yeah, that's right.
And who am I to tell God, you really goofed when you made me?
You've heard me do my sperm thing, haven't you?
Oh, do it for him.
I always love to do this with young people. I always love to pick some kid out of the audience and say, what's your name? The kid said, Charlie. I said, Charlie, I want you to understand something. You were once a sperm. And the kid, and all the other kids laughed.
Yeah.
And I said, you were once one of 5 million sperm in a group. And I always look at them and say, do you remember? And by this time, everybody's laughing. You say, what's more is all 5 million of you lined up at a starting line. And at the end of a long, long tunnel, there was one egg. And there was a race. And you won.
Yeah.
And everybody clapped
Yeah.
at that point. I said, Charlie, do you realize the odds were 5 million to 1?
Isn't that amazing,
and
really?
You came through. If your mother had had a headache, you wouldn't even be here. You are here by divine appointment.
Isn't that
Don't
the
you
truth?
ever call yourself a loser. You were the winner of an incredible race.
Yeah.
Yeah, you got there, baby.
And some of those sperm had 2 tails, 2 heads,
Yeah.
but you
And
were
you
lucky
beat 'em
enough
all.
to have 1 head,
And
1 tail, and you...
beat them all.
Yeah.
You beat them all.
And that's all of us.
Swim. You know,
Isn't
the
that
sperm,
something?
you think that guy that won all those medals at the Olympics, you outswam 5 million sperm. Whoa!
Isn't that weird?
Isn't that weird?
I mean, really.
And you begin to see that the odds are against you even being here. Wow. To sit back and say, I am here by divine appointment.
Yeah.
What a great thing to say. I always love to also say, and if God has a refrigerator, your picture's on it.
I've stolen that from
If
you.
he's got a wallet, your picture's in it.
Yeah.
And when the angels gather around, he flips open his wallet and he says, there he is.
I believe that.
There's my Tony. Isn't he special?
I love that.
Isn't he special? Yeah. That the God just thinks you're absolutely wonderful.